8 mistakes you're making while studying for your CompTIA A+ certification exams in 2022. I pay a lot of attention to metacognition, which is the involvement of thinking about thinking. When it comes to studying, many people think that they need to dig into the material and memorize as much material as possible rather than actually approaching the material in an intelligent way to maximize their chances of passing the exams that they're studying for. I'm specifically witnessing this in the IT field where we're studying for these certifications, and we like to stack these certifications up and everything, and people focus on getting that piece of paper rather than actually learning the skills that the exam is certifying them for, which is actually a bad look when you're interviewing and the employers are asking you questions having to do with what you supposedly learned while studying for these certifications, or what you supposedly learned on the job. That's kind of a bad look, and I think this is why this is a very important topic that many people need to pay attention to, specifically in 2022. Why am I talking and phrasing this and contextualizing this in 2022? This is more for the future at large, but in 2022 specifically, we have so many things that play into how we progress and how we advance ourselves in our career, right? So the first mistake that you're making is you're allowing too many distractions. So what are some distractions that you're allowing? Social media, friends, family, other hobbies and supposed interests, right? You have to create some sort of boundary between your study time and everything else, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't go on social media or hang out with your friends or your family or whatever, but in 2022 and in the future at large, it's very important to have your me time, because if you don't have your me time, you're not gonna develop, you're not gonna make best use of your time. And this definitely goes for study time. There's nothing more distracting and demotivating than somebody pinging you on your phone or somebody bursting into the room asking you a question when they know that you're studying, right? So it's up to you, and it's your responsibility to set those boundaries and let people know you're studying and you're not to be bothered. What I like to do when I'm studying is set up my do not disturb so that no one can reach me. No one can reach me. It doesn't matter. Like, there's no emergency during the time that I'm spending studying that is that serious. Like, I get that ruthless with it, because there are so many distractions in this world. Like, we're all so connected with social media. We're so connected with text messaging and messaging apps and all of these things that if we don't cut people off, we'll never get anything done. And here's the thing, what is gonna happen within that 4-hour time period you're spending studying, right? Whether it's an emergency or somebody needs to ask you a question, what's gonna happen within that time period that you can do anything about anyway? There's nothing you can do about it. How I look at it is, this is me time, right? And I'll get back to you after that 4-hour period. The second thing, overstudying. Now, in addition to creating boundaries, you might actually go too far and create a study window that is insane. Like, there's some people that are studying 8 hours a day, and I don't know why they're studying 8 hours a day, because after 4 hours you're not necessarily getting anything useful out of that study session, and you might actually be setting yourself back. Chill with the overstudying. Overstudying includes studying right up to the day of the exam, and some people actually do that. There's some people that cram last minute information into their study sessions or into their study phase right before the exam, and you're actually setting yourself back when you do that. Here's why. We have something called working memory, and we also have something called long-term memory. Your working memory is your short-term memory. It's just another phrase for your short-term memory. So if you think about it in terms of a computer, we have RAM and we have storage, right? Our working memory is very similar to RAM, and we know what happens when we have a computer and we have too many programs running. It overloads the RAM and it can slow the computer down. It can affect the computer in a way that we don't want, right? It's very similar to how overstudying studying can overwhelm our working memory. And especially if you do that right up to the day of the exam, you're going to pretty much demotivate yourself and also negatively affect your performance. When I'm studying for these certification exams, anywhere between 24 to 48 hours, I'm not looking at any material because there's nothing that I can do or study that's going to change the outcome of the exam at that point. And I advise that you just leave it alone at that point. There's people that are unsure about themselves at that point, and I'd highly advise that if you feel that way, to just schedule the exam maybe a week out. You'll be able to pick up from there, right? And just use that week to kind of like go over areas that you're not comfortable with. The next mistake you're making is not using the Pomodoro technique. So the Pomodoro technique is essentially breaking up your study sessions into small chunks, into little rounds with maybe a 5 to 10 minute rest after each chunk, right? And this allows for you to spend that dedicated period to studying and drilling down into the material that you need to learn. If you are not using the Pomodoro technique and if you're not breaking your study sessions down into these small chunks, what you're doing is you are not making efficient use of your brain power. Let me explain. So after about 25 minutes or so of focus, your brain starts to wandering and you start to lose focus. This is something that you can train, sort of like a muscle, but just know after about 25 minutes, your concentration starts to kind of drop off. That's when you should take a break, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, get some water, take a walk, and then come back and start again. And you'll find that you'll feel rejuvenated. It's kind of like refreshing yourself. So a lot of people are not doing that. A lot of people are just sitting down with a book or a video and just staring at the screen or staring at the book with with their eyes glazed over, and they're not actually retaining anything. They're not actually learning anything. And then when you combine that with the fact that we're all addicted to our phones and social media and things of that nature, you're just making it worse. So I believe that I read somewhere that our attention span is declining every year. I forgot where I read that from. I read a lot, so I don't remember where I get these things from. But the fact is that our attention span is declining. I think that in 2022, you should definitely use the Pomodoro technique or something similar to the Pomodoro technique in order to maximize your study time efficiency. The next mistake that you're making is you're trying to memorize acronyms. I made a video about this before, and it's something that a lot of people struggle with. A lot of people struggle with memorizing acronyms and trying to, they stress about learning silly acronyms that really don't matter unless you know the concept at large. If you don't understand the higher order concepts, then an acronym is not going to help you in any real world in any real world manner, right? It's just a waste of time to sit there and memorize what RDP means or DHCP or DNS when you don't know what those concepts are connected to. Instead of trying to memorize acronyms, learn the higher order concepts. Why do we need DHCP? Why do we need DNS? Why do we need RDP? And when you learn those acronyms in their proper context, you won't have to memorize them. It's just something that your brain will automatically fill in. When you associate these acronyms with their function rather than just the letters that they represent, you're in a much better position to actually learning and using them. The next mistake that you're making is avoiding your least favorite subjects. This is something that happened to me while I was studying for the CCNA. I was avoiding IPv6 because IPv6 is kind of intimidating at first. When you see that 128-bit address, you're like, okay, this is not 32 bits. This is not IPv4. This is gonna be hard. How are we gonna subnet this thing? But when I stopped avoiding IPv6 and actually learned it, actually took time to learn it, it was actually not that bad. I actually ended up buying a whole book on IPv6, and that helped me immensely on the exam because that was an area that I needed to know. That's an area that everybody needs to know because in 2022, we're starting to move into IPv6. We're starting to utilize IPv6. I believe that Apple is using IPv6 in its private relay feature. I was surprised to find that out. I was just like, well, I was kind of blown away by that because during my CCNA studies, it was always talking about IPv6. We ran out of IPv4 addresses and we're gonna use IPv6 and yada, yada, yada. But I was thinking to myself, hey, yeah, right. It seems like we're way too comfortable using NAT with IPv4. So Yeah, we'll get there when we get there, but I was actually surprised to see that IPv6 address being implemented on one of my devices. I think it was through the private relay feature. So stop avoiding the topics that are your least favorite. That's something I always ask people when they say that they're doing bad on like practice tests or when they fail an exam. I always ask them, okay, which topic is your least favorite? And then they'll tell me, and I say, look, drill down on that topic, because that's more than likely the area that you're weak in. And lo and behold, when they look at their score report, or when they pay full attention to their score report, they'll see that that's the area that they need to drill down on. The funny thing is too, is that many people, when I ask them that question, and this is how I know that this is prevalent, many people they're actually in denial about it. I asked this one person after they failed an exam, okay, what's your least favorite subject? Because that is going to tell you where you need to focus on. And that person said that they got their score report or whatever, and they'll see which topics they need to work on. And I'm like, that's not the question. In my head, I left it alone, but in my head, I said, not what I asked you. You're avoiding the topics that you're not interested in, and that's probably what's killing your score. But yeah, just take this one from me. If you're avoiding anything, if it might be networking, it might be programming is something I avoid a lot. And now I'm actually starting to learn how to program, because it's coming back to bite me in network engineering with the automation stuff. So if you are ignoring a topic, make sure that you spend even more attention focusing on that specific topic. The next mistake you're making is my favorite. You're taking way too many notes. Note taking is just turning yourself into a glorified copy machine. That's all you're doing. You're sitting down and you're just copying sentence after sentence, or you're copying a word, or you're copying out of the book. You're not actually learning any material. This is something that we've been taught to do in grade school, and kind of ridiculous to me, because if you think about the way that children learn, for example, they're one of the perfect examples for how to learn. They learn by doing, and they learn by repeating. When it's a language, they repeat what you say. When it's, learning how to play a sport, they repeat how to do it, right? Or to repeat how to do a specific movement, like how to swing a baseball bat or throw a ball. That's something that they have to repeat. And here's why. You need to repeat what you're doing, meaning active recall or active learning or active repetition, in order to build it into your motor engram, right? Your motor engram is essentially your central nervous system working with your efferent nervous system, your hands, and your and stuff like that. Any anatomy or MDs watching this, let me know if I'm right or wrong, but I do believe that that's what it is, right? In order for you to learn something, you have to embody it, meaning you have to physically, quite literally embody what you're learning. A great example of this is studying for the CCNA. Studying for the CCNA meant I had to buy physical equipment and practice the concepts, practice implementing the concepts on my device, right? It's like riding a bike. Like, you never forget how to ride a bike, right? It's like second nature at this point. Whenever I'm entering the commands, I know which commands to enter. I know the abbreviations of the commands. I know when to use the commands. I know how to configure and verify. It's crazy how practicing for many hours. I think I studied for maybe 500 hours for the CCNA before I got it, and most of that was spent labbing. Most of it was spent rehearsing the information, lecturing the information. I would say about 5% of those 5 hours was spent taking notes. The way that I took notes, it wasn't necessarily in a traditional sense, right? I took notes in a stream of consciousness fashion, where I would just pretty much recall what I read, recall what I learned, and just write it down on my notebook. I didn't even take notes for all of the topics, and you really think about it, and I think this is why a lot of people get demotivated. If you're taking notes, and like if it's for the A+ exams, the A+ exams are a lot of material. So you mean to tell me you're gonna go from subject to subject and you're gonna take notes on every single subject? Mind you, this is the IT world. You don't need to take that many notes, at least not when you're learning. When you're learning something and you have the material in front of you, the books in front of you, let me stop right here and make it clear. When I say stop taking notes, I don't mean in a job role capacity. That's different. I'm talking about when you're actually studying for an exam. When you're actually studying for an exam, taking notes is unnecessary because the material is right there in front of you. You can always reference that material. It goes doubly for IT. IT means that you have to learn via hands-on practical study. That's the way that you're going to learn the material and retain it, and you have to do it over and over and over and over again. Right? Note taking is not really going to help you. The only time note taking is really going to help you is if you're using it in an active recall fashion, like I mentioned just now, where you're using a stream of consciousness method to recall the information that you learned. And even so, you're contextualizing it and you're fitting it together on that piece of paper from your own memory. Anything that you are fuzzy on, refer back to the book and you can fill it in. I'll give you another example of how I studied for the CCNA. I would say about a week before I had to take the CCNA, some routing stuff was throwing me off, right? Specifically on how a Cisco router makes routing decisions. And that was kind of fuzzy in my mind. I was mixing some terms up. So I decided to go and sit in my car. I got a little notebook and I just started writing out how the routing process works from a high level. And then I just started kind of like filling it in, right? Started building how the router builds the routing table and why it builds it in such a way. And I was able to iron out those wrinkles in my knowledge, right? Didn't really need to refer to a textbook or anything. I used some Cisco documentation. At some points, maybe once or twice, I had to refer to some more advanced routing concepts that weren't really necessary, but it helped me to take a high level view and to drill down into the details. So these are some gems that I'm giving you, and I'm confident that if you apply what I just told you for the past 5 minutes, you'll do so much better on your exams because you're actually making real world use of the material and you're actually learning in a more authentic way. I promise you. And studying will be a lot more enjoyable because you're not looking forward to sitting down and looking and reading into a textbook and then staring at a video for hours. No, you're gonna actually be looking forward to turning on your lab or trying something out and making mistakes, right? It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail. And I think that what the issue is with, not taking notes is that a lot of people are afraid to fail. A lot of people don't actually believe in their ability to learn the material without having to rely on a crutch such as a notebook, because it is a crutch. Here's another thing. When you are writing things down and when you're depending on note taking, you're giving yourself permission to forget. Really, think about it. We used to be able to remember phone numbers, so many different phone numbers. I used to memorize my mom's phone number, my dad's phone number, brothers and sisters' phone numbers, and I have a lot of siblings. Now it's like, why do I need to remember any of that? I have an iPhone or calculators, right? We used to be able to do math much better than we currently are, and you'll be surprised at how many really smart people don't really know how to do basic math anymore. It's really kind of scary, right? So when you're taking notes, you're actually short-circuiting the learning process. You're gonna forget stuff. And ironically enough, when you're taking notes, you're making it harder for you to memorize those acronyms we were just talking about. Another mistake you're making, you're neglecting your diet. That's a huge part of this, especially in the IT world. If you're sitting down at a desk all day and you're eating a bagel here, you're eating a muffin there, and you're not getting enough veggies, and then on top of it you're not drinking enough water, your brain is not gonna like that. I had to take a moment of silence there because loading up on low quality food is really something that's setting you back when it comes to learning. I don't even want to say studying at this point. It's learning. At this point, you're really destroying your ability to learn properly when you're loading up on a bunch of carbs that inflame your body, inflame your immune system. It's your gut, everything, right? And we know now that our gut is connected to our brain, right? It's our second brain. Back in the day, I was a personal trainer, so that's how I know all this stuff. But anyway, you don't neglect your diet. You need to, I would say, get more fruits in, more veggies in. Pay attention to your fiber intake, your protein intake. Just moderate your carbs depending on your physical activity or how well you tolerate carbs. Monitor that, because carbohydrates, you all know of having a high carbohydrate meal and then suddenly you're getting tired after that. Like that's a hypoglycemia issue, right? Your body is just pretty much sucking up all of the carbs out of your system and the glucose in your system, and your sugar levels just drop out of nowhere. So you suddenly start feeling, kind of lethargic, you start feeling achy, and that's not good for studying, because if you're feeling lethargic, you're not going to be able to focus on an exam. And that's why I noticed that when I eat a meal heavy in fruits, veggies, and proteins and stuff like that, I'm able to concentrate for a longer period of time. But when I indulge in carbs right before I study, it's not pretty. It has a very it has a negative effect, is the best way I'll put it for now, because I don't want to be too TMI. But take care of your diet. I don't know what works for you, but that's only a question that you can answer. You have to figure out whether you're a vegan, carnivore, or keto, Mediterranean diet. You have to figure out whatever works for you, make sure that you're doing that. And how you do that is, after you eat, pay attention to how you feel. Don't neglect how your physical sensations feel when you eat a meal, right? So diet is important. If you can eat fish, I would say if you do eat fish, get some salmon. You can also take some supplements like fish oil. That stuff helps you. Well, there's been some studies that says that it helps you with memory and learning and stuff like that. I don't really know if the study, because there's conflicting studies, but that's what I did while I was studying for the CCNA, and it worked for me. So I'm just putting that out to you guys. Another mistake you're making is neglecting exercise. Exercise is very important. There's been studies that show that after a bout of exercise, you get an increase in BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. I believe this helps you to learn better, it helps you to remember more, and also just at its basic level, exercise increases blood flow to your brain, right? You need blood flow going to your brain on a consistent basis, of course, to learn the material. I also read recently, I think it was, I forgot where I read it. I read so many books that I forget where I'm learning this from. I read somewhere that our blood flow to our brain decreases about, I think, a portion of a percentage every year, or a percentage every year, over, I think, 30 or something like that, or 20. It's something ridiculous. I have to look it up, but that's insane, right? And exercising helps you to maintain that blood flow, right? That's something that you definitely have to make sure you're doing on a consistent basis, especially in IT. We're always sitting at these desks and we're always, sedentary, and exercise is very important for our health and well-being, our mood, right? Mental health and stuff like that. So do not neglect exercise. That is something that I did on a regular basis while I was studying for the CCNA. I built exercise into my routine. So I would study for a few hours, then I would hop on my exercise bike. I don't think you guys can see it in the back, but it's somewhere over there, right? And I would just hop on the bike for 30 minutes and pedal, watching Jeremy's IT lab. Oh, the memories. But I would just go get on the bike, watch Jeremy's IT lab on my iPad, and just work it out. And then when I was done, get something to eat, take a shower, of course, and then get back to studying. So build exercise into your daily regimen, because it's going to help you. You're going to feel so much better when you exercise on a regular basis. You're going to have these releases of endorphins and dopamine and all that good stuff, right? So yeah, get your exercise. And the last thing I'm going to talk about, you're making a huge mistake by not documenting your progress. This is a huge mistake that I made when I was first starting out, when I was studying for the A+. I wish I had started recording and documented my process back then, because it's very valuable information, and a lot of people like A+ information, CompTIA A+ information, as I can see from my analytics on this channel. I did so much labbing. I dabbled in some type of computer repair. I did so many things that I could have documented and shown you guys along the way. And also it would have created a more robust portfolio for job interviews. And believe it or not, these interviewers are looking for your online presence. And the best way to get ahead of that is creating your personal brand. Treat yourself like a media company. Create a blog, a podcast, a YouTube, so that you can document your progress, document your process, your journey, and do demonstrations like I'm doing, right? I really, really highly advise doing that, especially in 2022. We're getting a lot of people in the hiring space that are paying attention to this stuff because they want to see who you are even before they bring you in. They'll have, the preliminary phone interview, and then they'll decide if they want to go further. Even before that, if you have your resume, like my resume, I have my LinkedIn link on top and my YouTube channel link on top as well. It allows for interviewers to, check me out before they decide to give me a call. That can either work for me or against me. It can either work for you or against you, because if they don't like what they see, then they're not even going to give you a call. Whereas if you don't put anything related to social media or your online presence on your resume, they'll just have to go off of your resume, right? So I think that it'll help if you can create demonstration videos showing your skills, showing your competencies. Specifically, if you have those skills and competencies on your resume, you want to create some media, some content around that, showing and proving that before you even get to the interview, right? I had an interviewer that was reading my blog, that was checking out my YouTube channel. He's watching my subnetting videos. He was watching my OSPF videos, my Active Directory videos, these vlog type of videos that I like to do talking about Active Recall. And trust me, they are watching. So if you are thinking about getting into this field and you don't have any IT experience and you're studying, and you're specifically, if it's for the A+, A+ has a lot of material that you can demonstrate to employers when you're applying for entry-level positions. And even if you're in an entry-level position and you want maybe like a system admin or a network admin position, you do well to show the employer your skills, right? And you can do that again through your online personal brand presence, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm trying to see if I forgot anything else. I don't even know how many. I stopped counting, right? I didn't even start counting. Anyway, if you like videos like this, click right here, and I'll talk to you guys next time.